everyone, Elodie here, and welcome to this new episode of the Pint of Science podcast. Today, I have the pleasure to have the two founders at my microphone, Praveen Paul and Mikhail Motskin. Hi, Praveen.
Hello.
Hi, Misha.
Hello, Elodie.
This episode is a little bit special because we're approaching the 10th edition of the festival and we wanted to feature the people behind the organization. And obviously, we're starting with the people that are the origin of everything.
Of everything.
Yeah, of everything.
Life, the universe, and everything.
Exactly. Well, everything Pint of Science, let's say. Before we talk about the festival, Praveen, Misha, how do you know each other?
Yes, it's a good question. I'm interested to actually hear Misha's recollection of us meeting. So actually, I remember it very distinctly, meeting Misha the first time. We were both postdocs working at Imperial College, and I had to go and use a cell culture room, basically a small lab, and there's like a booking system where whoever's using the room writes their name. And I went along and I looked on the little sheet and it said like Michael, and I thought, who's Michael? Who's this Michael person? And I opened the door and he was there. I said, hello. That's how we first met. That's what I remember. Yeah.
Well, what I remember from Praveen is basically the most organized lab member there, that all her sort of stacks of pipettes and pipette tips were like super organized. And I always was afraid to piss her off because like everything you do is wrong unless it's by her organization. Yeah.
That's really interesting because I think also when we started talking about ideas of doing things, like we didn't know each other at all. So we were not, I wouldn't say we were friends. We'd only known each other for a very short time. And then we started chatting about these events.
Praveen is pretty scary.
I'm not scary.
No.
I'm not scary at all. No.
No, you're not. It's a perfect transition. So basically, you were not friends. You were lab mates. And how did you have the idea of Pint of Science? What happened? So you said you were starting to chat about the events.
I'll let Misha go for that one. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's actually all started. I was doing a course about sort of like to create a project, and the project was like I thought about a project to bring basically patients to the lab to meet the scientists that work on their disease. So we were like working on Parkinson, on stroke, on ALS, and we're just thinking about how we can bring patients that have the disease to meet the scientists that work on it, because usually scientists quite sadly don't meet the patients they're working for to treat their disease. And I had this idea, and I remember I managed to convince all the other lab heads to join the program. And then I talked to Praveen about it, and she was like, I wouldn't say enthusiastic, because Praveen is very realistic, and she just saw like what would be like the problems, but she also like grounded me very, very much with the idea, because I was thinking about like hundreds of people coming to the lab, and she's like, you cannot have hundreds of people over here. And it was very true, and it was really grounding for the project. And then I think like shortly after, the spark happened, and that's suddenly Praveen saw the opportunity there, and then it just started to work really well together.
So this project worked really well, and this is how you decided to start Pint of Science.
Yeah, I think so. We first started by inviting people into our lab to see what we do as scientists, and as Misha said, it was really eye-opening for us as scientists, because we spent most of our time looking down a microscope and not actually meeting people. And we had about 100 people come and visit our labs, and we just thought, well, if people are interested to coming to see us in our labs, in our natural environment, why don't we take this out to more people? I think at the time, Misha was going to a lot of festivals and gigs.
Yeah.
And I think he liked the idea of you can choose kind of which stage to go and watch your favourite band. And we thought it'd be really cool if you can go and find your favourite type of science, whether you're interested in black holes or psychology, how the brain works, how your body works, and go to somewhere and go and hear about that and actually choose to listen to something that you're interested in listening to, and to learn and to question it as well.
Yeah, because that's the unique thing about Pint of Science, isn't it? It's not the science in bars because it's been around. Actually, I've made a report when I was in high school about a cafe that was the first cafe in Europe. And this is where all the philosophers were actually going to chat about, philosophy, science, whatever at that time. So it's been around forever, but that's the way of doing it that is different. It's the way of like a festival, overwhelming numbers of events everywhere, and then you have to decide which one you're going to go. Like,
Exactly. And we've condensed everything down to 3 days. So instead of doing kind of like because even when Misha came up with the idea, I was like, why are we doing everything over 3 days? Why don't we just do it like once a month? Then, and people could come. He said, no, it'd be really, and actually, to be fair, we didn't really understand why it needs to be 3 days. But I think after we'd gone through the first one, we thought actually it really creates like a buzz and it kind of makes it more accessible. Like people who might not think that science is for them, not interested, or think, oh, it's Pint of Science, I will go because everyone else is doing it, so let's join in. But obviously when we started small, we didn't intend to start a regular science festival, and we never knew it would grow. It was just an idea between friends, and we had no experience in doing events, nothing, a very steep learning curve. And we just kind of learned as we went along. The first one was a complete mess. We managed to get through it. We muddled our way through it. Yes, Elodie, you were there on our first one as
I
well.
remember, and yeah, I wanted to ask you, how did you start practically? Because it started practically or unpractically, maybe. Because I joined, actually, fun story. I joined on the Valentine's Day 2013, and you started end of 2012. It seems so. How did you start practically? Like, did you recruit friends around? Did you manage to? What were the first steps of Pint of Science? Because you had the idea, you were like, we're going to do that. It's going to be super cool. What do we do now?
Yeah,
Yeah.
just get people involved.
Yeah, so I think that in the beginning it was quite challenging because first of all everybody knew about scientists going to the pub and explaining their research, but the whole idea of creating a festival out of it was a bit difficult, and especially if it was in multiple cities, how are we going to organize it? So the first thing was like to create a structure, and I remember just working on this Excel sheet trying to create this really complex graph. And I still have it somewhere. It's called a flower organization.
Yeah.
How every part of the flower is creating is part of the community. It's like there's no part of it that is more important than the other. There's no hierarchy. Um, and and the idea was to create a community of scientists that they drive it. For each university that was involved, we were recruiting like a coordinator, and that's I think that's really nice to tell the story how you got involved, which I find very funny until this day, is that we had a coordinator for each university, and for some reason the UCL coordinator decided to drop out after like
Yeah.
a month of being involved, and there was quite a lot of mess going around. We didn't have any documents, any guidelines. We're just making up stuff as we go, and then somehow I don't even remember how I got your number through connections of connections,
I
and I
got an
just
email, actually. I got an email on my lab mailing list on the Valentine's Day, so 14th of February, saying Pint of Science is being created and they are looking for volunteers. And then it was your number, and I called directly when I saw it. So this is how
fantastic. I didn't even remember that, and because I was spamming
yeah.
anyone that I had, I was spamming just to get more contacts. And I remember the phone call with you. I was just like explaining the festival, and all you said is like, yes, yeah, okay, no problem, yes, yes. And we hanged up, and I was thinking, oh my god, is that gonna work? And I think it was a week or 2 weeks after that we had like the coordinators meeting, and I think that was the first one
Yes.
that everybody came to sort of this meeting room near my house,
Yep.
um, and I remember you coming with like a cowboy hat and boots ready for a party, and you were
Yes.
20 minutes late, and I was thinking, whoa, how's it gonna work? And I have to say, like, yeah, it was so amazing how this sort of opportunity turned, like, now you're the international director and basically the heart of Pint of Science. So yeah, a lot of random things like that happened, and a lot of it is because of you.
Oh, thank you. Well, Praveen is the heart. I'm just like assisting the heart.
Uh,
But but yeah,
always go for the heart.
I remember the crazy. Yeah, I had the party after that, and I was dressed up for the crazy party,
Oh,
and
okay.
that's
It's a
why.
party afterwards.
Yeah,
Not,
that's why.
not okay.
I
Makes sense.
wasn't coming to the meeting in cowboy hats and big boots just for the meeting. I had a party after, and in London, it's like normal. You just dress up for your party after, and you carry on your life, with like your fancy outfit. But yeah, I remember I just like I took notes and I was like, yeah, yeah, they want me to do that, no problem, no problem. I remember the first year, it was so like we were so we were running around. I remember the first day of the festival, I was distributing all the goodies, running around like London with glasses and bags and stuff. It was so like so last minute, but it was really amazing. So you reached out to people. The first edition was in 3 cities, right? It was Cambridge, Oxford, London.
Yeah.
Yeah, with 5 universities involved: UCL, Imperial, King's, Cambridge, and Oxford.
Yeah.
And I think it's important to mention that I think we're talking a lot about science communication and how sort of science is presenting the work to the public. But I think what was unique and opportunity for people like us and that joined Pint of Science is that a lot of us got a lot out of it because
Mm,
we had this opportunity to work in the lab on our research. We wrote papers, we did experiments, and we wanted to be involved in to get involved with science communication. But there's sometimes you need to fill up a form here with different departments, and you felt like there are opportunities, but I want to create something of my own.
mm,
And I
Yeah.
think that was part of like the
I
beauty of it.
Yeah, I think that's the key thing. I think with Pint of Science, even today, there are kind of two branches to it. One is getting all that information out there to the public, for the public to meet scientists directly, but equally important is to give scientists, researchers a chance and confidence to maybe learn skills in organising, in presenting, and doing something different, and just providing that platform where they can say, you know what, I fancy maybe having like a rap artist during my event. Yep, go for it. So the
mm,
freedom is very much given to the organisers to develop what they would like to do and how they would like to see it, and we provide the platform
mm.
to enable them to do that. I think that's really important for us to do that.
Yeah. And if I can add on that, like for me, what's really excites me now is when I see people in Pint of Science that took a learning from Pint of Science and applied it to their career. If it's so, for me, for example, I'm terrified of public speaking, so I'm not a good public speaker. I can do it if I'm practiced to death, but I really like organizing and coordinating. So that gave me the opportunity. And during Pint of Science, I sort of discovered that I'm really into branding and marketing, which that's what I do today in Genomics England.
Yeah.
So I think that's lots of people like me discovered other ways to communicate science, rather not just present, but also there's so many other roles in Pint of
Yeah,
Science.
exactly. There's so many
Yeah.
skills. I think it's the same for me as well. I think Misha and I have very different skill sets, which is good because it then complements each other. Misha is a great networker. I think he knows like
Mm,
everybody. You'll know somebody who could do something, or you'll know the right person and to kind of plug you in. And I love, well, it's just kind of the organisational aspect of it is kind of the key thing that what I do, and I enjoy doing, and kind of learning the skills that I like to use and not use. I think was Pint of Science great learning curve for me as well. It's kind of like self discovery, isn't it? And we want to give that opportunity to everyone else is involved as well.
Yeah, and actually, for the little anecdote, one of the volunteers in France, on the night, it was his first pint of science. He was almost crying. I could see the tears on his eyes because he said, "Oh my God, people are actually coming to my event. I made it. I created it. I picked the bar. I picked the speakers, and I decided an activity." And he was like, "And there are people I don't know at my event." And he was almost crying because for him, he was like, I've made something. People are there, they enjoy, and I was so happy about it. It really touched me because I felt, yes, as you say, both of you, it's science communication. It's nice to have the science communicated to the public, but it's also a very cool experience for people organizing it, and I think that's why it's spreading like, you know, crazy, because people actually enjoy doing it. We're giving them platform guidelines, we help them, but we also leave them the freedom to do the event their own way. So that's,
Yeah.
I think that's the very good thing about it. After the first one, so first one, 5 universities, 3 cities, 3,400 people.
I don't think it was as much as that. I don't think it was that many people, but
No,
okay,
I think it
it's
was.
fine.
I think it was.
Really? Okay.
No, I think as many
Yeah,
registered. I think the first one, but I think about 3,000 turned up. But yeah,
yeah. Well,
That's
something like
yeah. When
that.
thinking back on that, I mean, going from like we had no idea what we were doing, never organised events, never had like made a website. We didn't have an email address until February, and the events were in May. That
Yeah.
was just we were just muddling our way through it. So it's quite impressive that we managed to pull that off, and that's that goes down to everyone who's involved, just kind of pitching in and putting it all together. Yeah.
How did you feel after the first one?
wow, it was complete sort of euphoria. I was like, I just felt, wow, just something amazing happened, and I have got something to do with it. Again, like for me, the most exciting thing was our community.
Yeah.
We as coordinators, as event managers, the scientists who spoke, everybody was just elated. And it was so nice to receive emails and messages and be there on the nights and see that. And yeah, there were issues, and Pint of Science is, because of its structure and because people speaking in a pub, it's not like a TED talk that it's all 100% polished. It is raw, and that's also some of the beauty. Like scientists, like actually you're like 1 meter from scientists that maybe never practiced this sort of talk to lay audience. So it's much more raw
Yeah.
than something like a TED talk. It was really beautiful, really
Yeah,
beautiful.
I think that is the charm of Pint of Science. That is slightly rough around the edges as well. It's not, and I think after the first one, like in my head, it was just weird to think as a one-off, just because we were coming to the end of our contracts. We were a little bit bored. Misha was doing this kind of self-development course, and it kind of fitted in nicely. And it's like, okay, we've done it. And then Misha's like, oh, let's do this again. uh, but then we
Uh,
got getting emails from people. People like, why is this only in the southeast of England? Why is this so-called Golden Triangle? Why is it not in Scotland? Why is it not in Manchester? I just thought, okay, why not?
And
yeah,
then
and they were
international as
like,
well.
yeah, exactly, like you and starting like ASCO started in France, and we were like, why not actually? And then there were like Italy and Spain, and it was like it was very exciting time. I think on a personal level, it was also very challenging time because
Yes. Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
we were both like muddled through like a festival that we had no idea how to run, and suddenly we have to scale it up by 5-6 times bigger.
Yeah.
And
And every time we kind of built something or some infrastructure, we then grow massively. It's like, okay, that old infrastructure doesn't work. We need to rethink
Yeah.
it. And I just remember that time as just being all consuming. It's like I've never worked so hard on something in my entire life. It's just so much work goes into the background, and trying to keep up with it. You're kind of almost chasing your tail, and then you're growing at the same time. And I think, like personally, I think it's quite difficult for both of us because we were not working on other things. We were both unemployed. And then Misha, you had your twins come along, didn't you, as well?
yeah, that was like quite a bump. I like the word, but
And it's
yeah,
like, why are we doing this? So I think even a good 2 or 3 years into it, we're like, we can't keep doing this. It's
Yeah.
just so much work.
yeah. I think from a project to sort of organization, that was like quite a painful transition because we suddenly had to think about how do we scale it up in a way that we can actually pay salaries to ourselves out of it,
Mm.
because like otherwise it's a full-time job, and it was not possible for like in the first 3 years. And with having twins, it was like, okay, like at some point
Yeah.
I have to grow up
Yeah.
and actually get a job. And that was really challenging time. And I remember at that time when I think it really started to be just crazy. Like I think we there were like 10 countries, like
Yep.
20 cities around the UK,
Yeah, that
and
was 2017. That's when I started international director.
yeah, and I had to actually take another job
Mm.
And start working in a digital agency, which I think was also helpful for the organization because I learned how to do it. I would say like in the proper way. Until then, we were sort of guerrilla, like working in guerrilla. I think before 2017 was 2016,
Mm.
and that was really rough time. And Praveen was almost on her own, holding like
All
holding
the
the
pieces
fort.
Yeah,
together.
and I was not working on anything either. So it's like, what am I doing with my life? It's just, and it's a weird because you do go through a bit of a identity crisis. Because before we were working as scientists, you're working on different conditions, and you can explain to people
Mm.
what you do. It's like, okay, what do you do now? Don't know. Kind of do this thing that's taking all my time, and doesn't, I don't get paid for it. It's a large festival, but yeah, very strange time, and it was, yeah, it was a lot of work. It was madness.
It was also very proud moments because it's still very proud. But
Mm.
like I remember when I was working on the first website of Pint of Science, and I put in
Yeah.
on the homepage of the website the largest festival in the world, and obviously nothing happened yet. And people wrote to me back saying, it's probably not the largest festival in the world. It's still small, and like it's in 3 cities, but it's not largest festival in the world,
Yeah.
science festival in the world. And I was like, good point, and I removed it. But then around 2016, 2017, I
Yeah.
think we can confidently say that's pretty obvious that it's the largest science festival in the world.
Yes,
It's
I think we can say
definitely
that now.
big. And actually, this is perfect transition because I had a question about, do you have an anecdote or something that made you realize how big it is now?
I think sometimes when I just see it on, so well, actually, most of the time I forget because I'm kind of so
Yeah. You're
involved
into
in
it.
kind of
Yeah.
everyday tasks. Yes, and then when I do step back, I think, "Whoa, what's going on?" Or I see something on social media in somewhere like Costa Rica, and I'm like, "Oh, yeah, what's going on there?" And then and once you see those images from around the world, and also
Yeah.
having met people who have been involved in other countries, that's always very
Mm.
inspirational to see what they get out of it and how much of a difference it's made for them. That is like really inspiring to hear, and you're like, wow, this is amazing.
Yeah, I think like what really struck me once was I think it was like 2018 when we were just summarizing the numbers after the festival and from all the countries. I think that it
Mm.
was Brazil that came back, and they were like, yeah, 60 cities,
Yeah.
50,000 attendees. And, and we were like, look at it smile. We were like, wow.
I,
We just,
Yeah.
it
Yeah, I
just,
just I just love it how it's perceived differently in different countries. Like Brazil being an example, it's like the biggest science festival in Brazil, and how the whole community just gets together to
Yeah.
show off the scientists. And each country's got its own, I don't know, something that they want to show about the science in their country, and they've all got different motivations, and that's really
Mm.
interesting to hear and see.
yeah, I really love it when like you go around the street with your Pint of Science t-shirt and people are like, oh, yeah, I know that festival. Like,
Yes.
where did you go?
I've had quite a few. Usually when I go to an event, so in the past, so I'm very much, I think, behind the scenes kind of person. I don't normally,
Yeah.
people don't always know who I am. I remember going to an event. I just went by myself. First of all, I've not managed to get into an event. They're like, your name's not on the list. I'm like, yeah, just get in. One event I went to, and then I just sat down with a random group of people at a table. We just started chatting, and then one of them turns to me and says, "Oh, have you been to one of these Pint of Science events before?" And I was like, "Yeah, yeah, yeah, I've been to a few." And she's like, "All right, what do you think of it?" And I thought, "Oh, this is such a weird conversation. At what point do I say I'm the co-founder?" Well, I never did, but it's just interesting to have that conversation with somebody else. And I've actually, in the beginning, I had my friends recommending Pint of Science to me. They didn't know I was involved. So that was just like, oh, have you heard about this? You might like this. No, I
Exactly.
want it.
That's the best is when someone talks to you about Pint of Science saying, "Oh, you're gonna like it." It's like, yeah, some days I hate it, some days I like it. It's like, oh, you know it already. Yeah, I know it. So it's for me the fun story, the fun anecdote is that my boyfriend was wearing a French Pint of Science T-shirt when he was working in Hong Kong. So we are not in Hong Kong. And then he met a woman on the lift that asked him, "What is this T-shirt? Where you got this T-shirt?" So he started explaining what Pint of Science is, and she was like, "Oh no, I know what Pint of Science is. I've been to in Australia. I love it, but I was wondering where you got that T-shirt." And he came back home, and I think he didn't realize how big it was until that moment because he said, "I was in Hong Kong with a French Pint of Science T-shirt, and someone from Australia came to tell me the festival is amazing." It was like, yeah, you're everywhere. I was like, yeah, this is a pretty cool story. So
That's amazing.
we're approaching the end of this podcast. I really enjoyed talking to you, and I have two last things. The first one is, what is your wish for the festival? Do you have something like I know it's crazy to ask that because 9 years ago, so we would never have thought it would be that big and that like we do right now. So it's really hard to imagine what's gonna happen. But do you have some wish for the festival, like in every single country of the world?
So I'm a bit like a Jewish grandma, and my wish came true. Actually, I think last year Praveen told me my wish was that two people that met in Pine of Science would get married.
Yes, yes, and they have a baby, and we're gonna try to have them on the podcast as well.
Amazing. So that's, I think that was my wish. But I
So,
think the wish for the future of Pine of Science, yeah, I would say I would love it to really continue where it is, but also like evolve in new avenues. And I think where we are, like for example, with the art and science project with creative reactions,
mm,
we are evolving there and create more and more opportunities for scientists to explore science communication, because I think that's a lot of time it's almost prescribed by a lot of organizations what you should do to be a good science
yeah.
communicator. But I think scientists are clever enough to sort of try it and explore without prescription what is right.
Yeah, I think my wish is just, yeah, that carries on creating opportunities for people, whether it's people who attend or people who are involved in organising, just
Yeah.
to continue to learn about themselves and the ways of doing things, and hopefully even inspire them to change the way they live their lives or the way they do things for anyone who's involved, really.
Yeah, enjoying the community is amazing because even internationally we have people that, it's always, I'm joking about that, we're playing that game, that family game where you're exchanging people, every year it feels like we're
Yeah.
having someone living France going to UK, and then oh yeah, someone from Singapore is going someplace and everything, so it feels really like family. Yeah,
Yeah, I love that aspect of it where people have done Pint of Science in one country or one city, and then they move, they don't know anyone else, and then
yeah.
they seek out their Pint of Science chapter where they are and make new friends, and it's kind of an instant connection. So that's always lovely to hear.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I love the story. And we are arriving at the end, but I have a last thing that I'm not sure any of you remember, but I have a quote from you, Misha, actually. Yep. I hope you're
Yeah, I'm
scared.
looking forward to it.
You said once during, I think it was a launch event or something, and I love that quote because it's exactly what it was when we started Pint of Science and when you started Pint of Science. You said people thought we were crazy when we started. Now they know we are.
Yeah, no, I remember it. It was yeah, such a special moment. It's just like, yeah, I feel goosebumps now when we're talking about it. Yeah, because like we were crazy and people were like
Yeah,
continuously trying to like, especially in the first year, telling us maybe you should go smaller, just
Yeah.
one, two events, just try it out
Like,
first.
why are you doing this? What's the point? Don't do this. And yeah, we're up
yeah,
against quite a lot in the first couple of years of
And,
people
and
think it's
then
not a good idea. Yeah.
2 months later, people were calling us and saying, may I speak to, is this the Pint of Science
Yes.
office? And we're like, yeah, that's just me and Praveen here. That's the Pint of Science office.
I still get phone calls like, "Can you pass this on to your
Yeah,
finance
that's
department?" It's
me.
like, "Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
wait.
me."
You're like, you wait, and then you change your voice. Hello, finance department. So yeah, no, I just wanted to finish this episode on that quote because I really loved it, and I think it really captures how it is from the start and how it was and how it still is. Like completely crazy story, and it actually works, and it's actually a very good feeling to have it work like that.
And I also want to, if I may, to also add, like, I think now I'm sort of step back, and you and Praveen running Pint of Science, and I think yeah, like I said, Elodie, you're the heart of Pint of Science, spreading it internationally and spreading the spirit and just embodying Pint of Science. And Praveen is just such an amazing force that holding the fort together and being like really the all the brain and neurons that sort of drive Pint of Science forward. So I really, really acknowledge you for like making it what
Oh,
it
you're
is.
gonna make me cry. Thank you.
Thank you. And yeah. Oh no, thank
Kind.
you. I think it's all about Misha's insane ideas. I don't really describe it as insane because, just as I said, our personalities are so different. It's like, let's do this
Yeah.
idea, let's do this idea. I'm like, oh my god. But it was kind of just going
Yeah.
along with it as well. I think it was quite liberating for me on some level. It's like, okay, let's see how far we could do that. And for Misha to have that kind of initial vision to try something that's never been done, that was really important. And to give us the confidence, and I think we all carried each other through it.
Congrats, that's an amazing thing you've started and it's still going on, and I hope it's gonna go on for a very long time. Thank you for sharing everything with us, and I hope people enjoyed. And we will be back soon with more stories. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.